They say weddings are about family, about love, about belonging. At my daughter's wedding, I found my seat outside, next to the trash cans. No one noticed. No one cared. So I picked up the gift I brought, tucked it under my arm, and walked away. Minutes later, I made a single call, and their perfect day began to fall apart. You must see what happened next. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. Before the laughter, the humiliation, the phone call that changed everything. My life was never grand, but it was full of purpose. My name is Susan Callahan, Sue to everyone who knows me. And I've spent the last 35 years teaching third graders how to read, write, and believe in themselves. After losing my husband Tom to a factory accident when Marissa was 7, I learned that love meant sacrifice. Tom was inspecting a faulty boiler when it exploded. They brought me his hard hat and wedding ring in a manila envelope. I remember staring at that envelope for hours, unable to open it because that would make it real. But Marissa needed dinner. Marissa needed her bedtime story. Marissa needed a mother who could hold it together. So I did. I took on summer school, after-school tutoring, and weekend curriculum planning. Every spare penny went into a savings account labeled Marissa's Future. When other parents bought new cars or took vacations, I drove my ancient Honda and stayed home. When Marissa needed braces, I canceled my dental appointment. When she wanted to join the traveling soccer team, I sold my mother's silver tea set. "You give her too much," Carol said once, watching me hem Marissa's prom dress at midnight. "She needs to learn the value of things." But how could I explain to Carol that every stitch, every sacrifice, was my way of loving Tom through our daughter? That seeing Marissa succeed felt like keeping a piece of him alive? Now, on the morning of Marissa's wedding, I stood in my small bedroom, steam rising from the iron as I pressed my second-hand dress one more time. The blue satin caught the early light, reminding me of happier times. In the corner sat the gift I'd spent 3 years saving for, a vintage pearl necklace that had belonged to Tom's grandmother. The same necklace I'd worn at my own wedding, now restored and reset for Marissa. My phone buzzed. "Thanks again for everything, Mom. Today's going to be perfect. See you there." I smiled at the message, though something about it felt off. She hadn't asked where I was sitting, hadn't mentioned walking down the aisle together, hadn't said anything about the mother-daughter dance we'd planned months ago. Carol called as I was putting on my earrings. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I said, the standard answer I'd given for 28 years. "Sue." Her voice held that warning tone I knew too well. "Remember what we talked about. Don't expect too much today." "What's that supposed to mean?" She sighed. "Just the Briggs family. They're different. And Marissa, she's changed since—" "She's still my daughter," I interrupted. "And this is her wedding day. Of course she wants me there." "Of course," Carol agreed, but I heard the doubt in her voice. "Just remember, you've done enough. More than enough." After hanging up, I sat on my bed, surrounded by memories. The wall above my dresser held 25 years of school photos. Marissa with missing teeth, Marissa in soccer uniforms, Marissa at graduation. In each one, her smile grew more polished, more distant. I thought about the wedding expenses, mentally tallying what I'd contributed. The venue deposit when they'd fallen short, half the catering bill when prices unexpectedly increased, the photographer's retainer, the florist's down payment, all given quietly, without fuss, because that's what mothers do. Tom would have been proud, I told myself. He'd always said family came first. The drive to the vineyard took 40 minutes. As I pulled into the parking lot, I saw the transformation money could buy. White tents billowed in the breeze, crystal chandeliers hung from wooden beams, Servers in crisp uniforms carried silver trays. Everything sparkled with the kind of perfection that made my modest contribution seem almost laughable. I clutched my gift tighter, smoothing my dress as I walked toward the entrance. A young woman with a clipboard stopped me. Name: Susan Callahan, mother of the bride. Her eyes widened slightly before she recovered. Oh yes, let me just... She flipped through pages, frowning. Ah, here you are. You're at table 27. 27. The main tent only had 20 tables. I'd seen the seating chart myself. Yes, it's just outside the main tent. A lovely spot, really. Very intimate. My throat tightened, but I kept my smile fixed. I see. Thank you. As I walked through the venue, familiar faces turned away. Marissa's college friends, whom I'd fed countless times during breaks. Daniel's parents, who'd been perfectly pleasant during the engagement dinner I'd hosted. The wedding planner, Ben, who'd cashed my checks just last week. The main tent was a masterpiece of white and gold. But there was no table 27 inside. No seat with my name. No place for the woman who'd made this day possible. I found it finally. A small card table set up outside the tent, positioned between the service entrance and a row of garbage bins. My name card sat alone on the white tablecloth, the calligraphy beautiful but cruel in its isolation. For a moment I couldn't breathe. 28 years of sacrifice. And this was my place? Hidden away like an embarrassment? Like something to be ashamed of? Through the tent's opening, I saw them. Marissa radiant in the dress I'd helped choose. Daniel handsome in his tuxedo. Victoria Briggs holding court among her society friends. They moved through their perfect world. A world that apparently had no room for a retired schoolteacher with calloused hands and a second-hand dress. Marissa glanced my way once. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second before she turned back to her new family, laughing at something Victoria said. She didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't acknowledge the woman who'd given everything to make this moment possible. I stood there, gift in hand, as the truth settled over me like a shroud. I wasn't just forgotten. I was deliberately erased. Carol's words echoed in my mind. Don't expect too much. But I had expected something. Basic dignity. A seat at my only child's wedding. Recognition that I mattered. Even a little. The band began to play inside the tent. Glasses clinked. Laughter rose and fell like waves. And I remained outside, invisible, unnecessary. Something inside me, some last thread of hope I'd been clinging to, finally snapped. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of expensive perfume and catered food. I stood there, frozen, still processing the reality of my isolation. A server hurried past with a tray of champagne flutes, not even glancing my way. Inside the tent, crystal clinked against crystal, and Victoria Briggs's distinctive laugh cut through the air like a knife. I smoothed my dress again, a nervous habit from years of making sure I looked presentable for parent-teacher conferences. The blue satin suddenly felt cheap, outdated. Around me, women in designer gowns glided past in clouds of silk and chiffon. Their jewelry caught the light. Real diamonds, not the cubic zirconia in my ears. Mrs. Callahan? A tentative voice made me turn. Ben Morales, the wedding coordinator, stood there looking uncomfortable. His usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool spring air. Ben. I managed a smile. The venue looks beautiful. You've done wonderful work. He shifted from foot to foot, not meeting my eyes. About your seating arrangement. I want you to know it wasn't my idea. Oh? My voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant and hollow. The original plan had you at table 2, with family. He glanced toward the tent. then back at me. But Mrs. Briggs made some last-minute changes. Said something about optimizing the space. Optimizing the space? What a delicate way to say hiding the embarrassing mother. I see. I clutched my gift tighter. And Marissa agreed to this. Ben's silence was answer enough. He looked genuinely distressed. I tried to suggest alternatives, but it's all right, Ben. I patted his arm, falling into my teacher role of comforting others even when I was the one hurting. You're just doing your job. He nodded gratefully and scurried away, probably relieved to escape the awkward situation. I was left alone again, the sounds of celebration mocking me from inside the tent. A burst of laughter drew my attention. Through the gauzy fabric, I could see Marissa posing for photos with Daniel's family. Victoria had her arm around Marissa's waist, positioning her just so. The photographer, the one I'd paid a deposit for, snapped away, capturing the perfect family portrait that didn't include me. I thought about walking in there, making a scene, demanding my rightful place. But 28 years of putting Marissa first had trained me too well. I couldn't ruin her day, even if she'd already ruined mine. Instead, I sat down at my lonely table. The chair wobbled on uneven ground. From this angle, I had a clear view of the service entrance, where kitchen staff hurried in and out. The smell of garbage wafted over whenever the wind shifted. Mom? I looked up to see Marissa standing a few feet away. She looked like a princess in her dress, the one I'd helped her choose. Though she'd told the saleswoman it was Victoria's suggestion, her expression was a mixture of guilt and impatience. Sweetheart, I said, standing. You look beautiful. Thanks. She glanced around, taking in my isolated setting. Listen, about the seating. It's fine, I lied, not wanting to hear whatever excuse she'd prepared. It's just that Victoria had some concerns about the photos, and with her society friends here. She trailed off, twisting her engagement ring. You understand, right? It's just for today. Just for today. As if my humiliation had an expiration date. Of course, I heard myself say. Whatever makes you happy. Relief flooded her face. I knew you'd understand. You're the best, Mom. She leaned in for a quick, awkward hug, careful not to wrinkle her dress. I have to get back? The photographer wants more family shots. Family shots? The irony wasn't lost on me. I watched her hurry back to the tent, to her new family, to the life she'd chosen. A life that apparently had no room for the woman who'd sacrificed everything for her. The reception began in earnest. The band played, guests danced, and the celebration continued without me. Occasionally, someone would exit the tent to smoke or make a phone call, notice me sitting there and quickly look away. I recognized many of them. Neighbors, Marissa's childhood friends, people I'd known for years. None stopped to talk. A server eventually remembered to bring me a plate of food, lukewarm chicken and wilted salad. The champagne was flat. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. My phone buzzed with a text from Carol. How's it going? Send pictures. I couldn't bring myself to reply. What would I say? That I was sitting alone by the garbage, eating leftovers while my daughter pretended I didn't exist. The speeches began. I could hear them through the tent walls. Daniel's father spoke about family values. Victoria gushed about gaining a daughter. Friends shared funny stories about the couple. No one mentioned the bride's mother. No one acknowledged the woman who'd worked 2 jobs to put Marissa through college, who'd stayed up nights helping with homework, who'd sold her own wedding ring to pay for soccer camp. That's when I noticed the gift in my lap, the pearl necklace that had been in Tom's family for generations. The one I'd worn at my own wedding, when Tom had fastened it around my neck and whispered, "Now you're really a Callahan." I'd had it cleaned and reset, spending money I couldn't afford because I wanted Marissa to have something meaningful, something that connected her to her father, to our history. Looking at it now, I realized how foolish I'd been. Marissa didn't want connections to her past. She wanted to erase it, to pretend she'd sprung fully formed from Daniel's world of country clubs and stock portfolios. The dance floor opened up. Through the tent's entrance, I caught glimpses of swirling gowns and tuxedos. The father-daughter dance I'd been excluded from. The mother-son dance that highlighted my absence. Something crystallized in that moment. This wasn't just about a seating arrangement. This was about Marissa's choice to rewrite her history, to delete the parts that didn't fit her new narrative. And I was the biggest part that needed deleting. I stood up slowly, my legs stiff from sitting. The gift felt heavy in my hands. Inside the tent, the party continued, oblivious to the drama playing out in the shadows. I had a decision to make. I could stay here, accepting the scraps of attention Marissa might throw my way. Or I could finally acknowledge what this day had made painfully clear. I was no longer welcome in my daughter's life. My fingers tightened around the gift box. Inside that tent were thousands of dollars of my savings, transformed into flowers, food, and music. My sacrifices had built this perfect day, even if no one would ever acknowledge it. For the first time in 28 years, I considered putting myself first. My hands trembled as I placed the gift box back on the wobbly table. 28 years of putting Marissa first? And for what? To be hidden away like a shameful secret. The music from inside the tent swelled, as some romantic ballad I didn't recognize. And I made my decision. No dramatics, no confrontations. Just a quiet exit from a life that no longer had room for me. I picked up the gift, tucked my purse under my arm, and walked away from the garbage-scented table. My sensible heels, bought on sale specifically for this occasion, crunched on the gravel path leading to the parking lot. Each step felt like shedding a weight I'd carried too long. A server smoking near the service entrance watched me leave. Ben Morales, rushing between the tent and the kitchen, paused mid-stride, his eyes widening as he realized what was happening. I kept walking. My old Honda sat alone in the far corner of the lot, segregated from the Mercedes and BMWs, the way I'd been segregated from the celebration. As I slid into the driver's seat, my phone buzzed. Carol again. "Sue? Everything okay?" This time I answered, "I'm coming home." Her reply was immediate. "What happened? I'll explain when I get there." The drive back felt surreal. The spring countryside blurred past, beautiful and indifferent to my humiliation. I thought about Tom, wondering what he'd say about our daughter's choices. He'd always been the optimist, seeing the best in people even when they didn't deserve it. Carol was waiting on my front porch when I pulled up. She took one look at my face and opened her arms. I fell into them, finally letting the tears come. "Tell me," she said, leading me inside. Over tea in my small kitchen, I explained everything. The isolated table, the garbage bins, Marissa's weak excuses, the way everyone had looked through me like I was invisible. Carol's face darkened with each detail. "That ungrateful." "Don't," I interrupted. "She made her choice." "And now what?" "You just accept it?" I stared at the gift box on my kitchen table. "Number, now I make mine." Something in my voice made Carol lean forward. "Sue? What are you thinking?" I pulled out my phone and the folder I kept in my purse, the one with all the wedding receipts and contracts. "I'm thinking about all the deposits I made, the final payments that are due today." Carol's eyes widened. "You didn't... I paid the deposits, I confirmed, flipping through the papers. But the final payments were my responsibility. The catering, the flowers, the bar service. They're all waiting for my authorization. Sue, Carol breathed, a mix of shock and admiration in her voice. I found the catering contract first. The balance due. $8,000. Due by 3 p.m. on the day of service, or they had the right to cease operations immediately. My fingers hovered over my phone. It was 2:47 p.m. Are you really going to do this? Carol asked. I thought about Marissa's face when she'd explained about the seating arrangement, the casual way she'd dismissed my feelings, the years of distance I'd ignored, telling myself she was just busy, just focused on her career, just growing up. I dialed the catering company. Elegant Events, this is Maria. This is Susan Callahan. I'm calling about the Briggs-Callahan wedding. Oh yes, Mrs. Callahan. Is everything satisfactory with the service? Actually, I need to discuss the final payment. A pause. The payment that's due in 13 minutes? Yes. I'm afraid there's been a change in circumstances. I won't be able to complete the payment. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, Mrs. Callahan, without that payment, we'll have to stop service immediately. The contract is very clear. I understand, I said quietly. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. After hanging up, I looked at Carol. That's one. The florist was next, then the bar service, the wedding cake delivery. Each call was brief, professional, devastating. With each conversation, I dismantled the perfect wedding I'd helped create. The band, Carol reminded me, pointing to another contract. I shook my head. I only paid for the photographer and the venue deposit. The band was all Victoria. By 3:15, my phone started exploding with calls. Marissa, Ben, numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. Carol made more tea while we waited. The first voicemail was from Ben, panic evident in his voice. Mrs. Callahan, we have a situation. The caterers are packing up. They say the payment was declined. Please call me immediately. The second was from Marissa. Mom, where are you? What's happening with the food? People are getting hungry, and the staff is leaving. I deleted them without listening to the rest. You know this is going to cause chaos, Carol said, but she was smiling. I know. I sipped my tea. They'll have to problem solve. Maybe Victoria's society connections can help. We sat in comfortable silence, imagining the scene at the vineyard. The perfect wedding unraveling thread by thread. Guests confused, then annoyed, then angry. Victoria's careful facade cracking as vendor after vendor packed up and left. Around 4:30, a car screeched into my driveway. Through the window, I saw Marissa, still in her wedding dress, storm up the walkway. Daniel followed, looking bewildered. Carol squeezed my hand. Want me to stay? Please. The doorbell rang, followed by pounding. Mom, open up, I know you're in there. I opened the door to find my daughter red-faced and furious, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. What have you done? She demanded, pushing past me into the house. I left, I said simply. And I stopped paying for a wedding where I wasn't welcome. Not welcome? You had a seat. By the garbage bins, I interrupted. Outside the tent, away from the family photos, hidden from your new in-laws. Marissa had the grace to look ashamed, but only for a moment. That wasn't my idea. Victoria thought, and you agreed. I finished. You chose appearance over your own mother. Daniel stepped forward, his designer suit wrinkled. Mrs. Callahan, surely we can work this out, if this is about money. It's not about money, I said, feeling calmer than I had in years. It's about respect. It's about 28 years of sacrifices thrown away because I didn't fit the image you wanted to project. "You're ruining my wedding," Marissa wailed. "No, sweetheart. You ruined it yourself when you decided I was an embarrassment." She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe she'd only ever seen the mother who would give endlessly, never the woman who could walk away. "The venue is paid for until midnight," I continued. "And Victoria's band should still be there. I'm sure between your new family's wealth and connections, you can salvage something." "I can't believe you're doing this," Marissa whispered. I picked up the gift box from the table and held it out to her. "I was going to give you this. Your great-grandmother's pearls, the ones I wore at my wedding. But I realize now, you don't want connections to your past. You want to erase it." She didn't take the box. Instead, she turned to Daniel. "Let's go. We need to fix this mess." As they left, Marissa paused at the door. "I'll never forgive you for this." "I know," I replied. "But someday, I hope you'll understand." The door slammed behind them. Through the window, I watched their car speed away, back to the chaos I had created. Carol put her arm around my shoulders. "How do you feel?" I considered the question. The teacher in me wanted to feel guilty for the lesson I'd just taught. The mother in me ached for the relationship I'd lost. But the woman in me, the one who'd been invisible for too long, felt something else entirely. "Free," I said finally. "I feel free." We moved to the living room, and Carol poured something stronger than tea. As the evening deepened, my phone continued to buzz with calls and messages I didn't answer. Each notification was another thread in the web of dependency I'd woven around myself, now finally breaking. Tomorrow I would deal with the aftermath. Tomorrow I would figure out how to build a life that wasn't centered on someone else's needs. But tonight, I would sit with my best friend and mourn the daughter I'd lost long before this wedding. The gift box sat on my coffee table untouched. Inside, the pearls waited for a bride who wanted them, who wanted the history and love they represented. That bride wasn't Marissa. Maybe it never had been. As Carol and I talked late into the night, I realized something profound. I hadn't just walked away from a wedding. I'd walked away from an identity that no longer served me. For the first time in decades, I was just Sue. Not Marissa's mother, not Tom's widow, but simply myself. And that, I decided, was gift enough. Carol stayed until midnight, both of us monitoring the chaos through social media and the flood of text messages I continued to ignore. Someone from the wedding, probably one of Marissa's college friends, was live tweeting the disaster. "Band confused why half the guests are leaving early for a wedding fail. No cake? What kind of wedding runs out of food? Mother of the groom crying in the bathroom. Drama level." Around 11, a local news alert popped up on my phone. "High society wedding disrupted by vendor walkout. Details emerging." They called the news? Carol laughed incredulously. "Probably Victoria's doing," I said. She'd rather spin it as vendor incompetence than admit they couldn't pay. After Carol left, I sat alone in my quiet house, surrounded by photos of the daughter I'd lost. Sleep wouldn't come, so I made tea and opened my laptop. My email contained dozens of new messages, from relatives, from mutual friends, from numbers I didn't recognize, all wanting to know what had happened. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I opened a new document and began to write. Not excuses or explanations, but a letter to myself, a reminder of why I'd done what I'd done. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window and the sound of persistent knocking. Through the peephole, I saw Ben Morales, looking like he hadn't slept. I opened the door. "Ben." "Mrs. Callahan," he said, wringing his hands. "May I come in?" Against my better judgment, I let him enter. He sat on my couch, still wearing yesterday's rumpled suit. "I need to understand what happened," he said. "The Briggs family is threatening to sue everyone. The venue, the vendors, me." "They can't sue for services that weren't paid for," I pointed out. "But you authorized those contracts. You signed—" "I paid the deposits," I interrupted. The contracts clearly stated that final payments were due day of. When I didn't pay, the vendors were within their rights to cease service. Ben's shoulders slumped. "Do you have any idea what this has done to my reputation? Victoria Briggs is telling everyone I'm incompetent." A flash of anger sparked in me. "And where was your concern for my reputation when you let them seat me with the garbage?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "I tried to tell them it was wrong. But you didn't insist. You didn't refuse. You chose their money over basic decency. It wasn't that simple. It was exactly that simple." I stood, signaling the conversation was over. "You made your choice, Ben. Now live with the consequences." After he left, I noticed a car parked across the street. Through the windshield, I could see Victoria Briggs on her phone, gesturing animatedly. When she noticed me watching, she quickly drove away. The day passed in a surreal blur. Friends who hadn't called in years suddenly remembered my number. My principal from school left a voicemail. "Sue, is everything all right?" There are some interesting rumors circulating. Carol came by in the afternoon with groceries and gossip. The country club is buzzing. Apparently, Victoria had to call in every favor she had to get emergency catering. They ended up with pizza from Antonio's. "Pizza at a vineyard wedding," I mused. "How democratic." "There's more," Carol said, unpacking vegetables. "Daniel's father is furious. Turns out Victoria had been bragging to everyone about how they were covering all the costs. Now the truth is out." My phone rang again. Another unknown number. This time I answered. "Susan Callahan." A crisp voice I didn't recognize. "Yes." "This is Margaret Winters from the Tribune. I'm writing a story about the Briggs wedding incident. Would you care to comment?" I almost laughed. "No comment. But surely you want to tell your side." "My side is private. Goodbye." As evening approached, a certified letter arrived. Legal letterhead. I opened it to find a demand from Victoria's lawyer. I was to reimburse all wedding expenses immediately or face legal action. I called Thomas, my own lawyer and Tom's old friend from college. "Sue, they don't have a leg to stand on," he assured me after I explained. "You fulfilled your contractual obligations. The deposits were paid. The final payments were optional. They're claiming emotional distress." He snorted. "Let them try. Counter-sue for the same. I have a feeling their treatment of you would make a judge very sympathetic." That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I ordered takeout just for myself, opened a bottle of wine, and watched old movies. No grading papers. No worrying about Marissa's latest crisis. Just me, comfortable in my own company. The next morning, a different car was parked outside. Daniel's Tesla. He approached my door alone, looking haggard. "Mrs. Callahan," he said when I answered. "May I speak with you?" There was something in his demeanor, a humility I hadn't seen before, that made me step aside. "I need to apologize," he said once seated. I had no idea about the seating arrangement. about how they treated you." I studied him carefully. "Really?" "I was focused on other things. The ceremony, the guests, He trailed off. "That's not an excuse. I should have noticed. Should have insisted you be treated with respect. And now," he ran a hand through his hair, "now I'm seeing a side of my family, and of Marissa, that I don't like very much." This was unexpected. "What do you mean?" "My mother has been ranting non-stop about class and appearances, about how you embarrassed the family." He met my eyes. "But you didn't embarrass anyone. We embarrassed ourselves." I felt a flicker of sympathy for this young man, who was perhaps beginning to understand what he'd married into. "Marissa's not speaking to me," he continued. "She's furious that I apologized to the vendors, that I admitted we were wrong." He paused. "I found the seating chart in her things. Your name was originally at table 2. She crossed it out herself." The confirmation of what I'd suspected still stung. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "This isn't how anyone imagined your wedding day." "No," he agreed. "But maybe it's what we needed, a wake-up call." He stood to leave, then turned back. "The pearls you tried to give her. They were beautiful. She should have been honored to wear them." After he left, I sat for a long time, processing this new development. Daniel's visit had cracked something open, a possibility that not everyone was beyond redemption. My phone buzzed with another text from Marissa. "We need to talk. The lawyer says you could be liable for damages." I typed back, "My lawyer says otherwise." The only damage here was to my heart. She didn't respond. That afternoon, I did something I'd been postponing. I called the school board and officially submitted my retirement papers. 35 years of teaching, and I was ready for a new chapter. "Are you sure, Sue?" the superintendent asked. "You're our best third-grade teacher." "I'm sure," I said. "It's time." As I hung up, I felt lighter. Another string cut, another choice made for myself rather than others. The doorbell rang again. This time it was a delivery, a huge bouquet of flowers with a card. "From the vendors of the Briggs Callahan wedding. Thank you for your years of business and your integrity. We stand with you." I arranged them on my dining room table, their beauty a stark contrast to the ugliness of recent events. The florist had included white roses, the same ones I'd originally chosen for Marissa's bouquet, before Victoria insisted on exotic orchids. That evening, while preparing a simple dinner, I heard shouting from the street. Through the window, I saw Marissa and Victoria arguing beside Victoria's car. Their voices carried clearly. "This is your fault," Victoria shrieked. "If you hadn't alienated your mother—" "My fault," Marissa shot back. "You're the one who insisted on the seating arrangement." "I was trying to maintain standards. If you'd married someone appropriate—" "Daniel is appropriate. His family has new money. It shows in moments like these." I closed the window, not wanting to hear more. Their argument was the sound of consequences arriving home to roost. Later, as I prepared for bed, my doorbell rang one final time. Marissa stood there, still in designer clothes but looking defeated. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She sat on the couch where Daniel had sat hours earlier, but unlike him, she didn't apologize. "The wedding is ruined," she said flatly. "The social pages are calling it the disaster of the season." I waited. "Victoria blames me. Daniel's family blames her. Everyone's threatening lawsuits." She looked at me accusingly. "Are you happy now?" "No," I said honestly. "I'm not happy that your wedding was ruined, but I'm not sorry for standing up for myself." "Standing up for yourself?" Her voice rose. "You humiliated me." "No, Marissa, you humiliated me. I just stopped funding it." She stared at me, and for a moment I saw the little girl she'd been. Stubborn, proud, unable to admit fault. "I want you to fix this," she demanded. "I can't fix what I didn't break." "You broke everything." "No," I said softly. "I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken." Marissa's final words hung in the air between us like smoke. We sat in silence, two strangers wearing the faces of mother and daughter. The clock on the mantel ticked steadily, marking the moments of our relationships unraveling. "Do you remember," I said finally, "when you were 8 and wanted that American Girl doll? The historical one, Samantha?" She blinked, thrown by the change in subject. "What does that have to do with anything?" "I worked extra shifts for 3 months to afford it. Took in mending on weekends. Skipped lunches." I watched her face for any sign of recognition. "Christmas morning you were so happy. You said I was the best mom in the world." "That was 20 years ago." "Yes, and somewhere between then and now, I stopped being a person to you and became a resource." I stood, needing distance. "When did that happen, Marissa? When did I become something to use instead of someone to love?" She flinched but recovered quickly. "I've always loved you." "Have you? Or have you loved what I could do for you?" Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face paled. "Daniel's mother is giving an interview to Channel 7 about the wedding fiasco." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "You should go," I said. "Deal with your new family." She stood, gathering her designer purse. At the door, she turned. "The lawyer will be in touch about the damages. As will mine." After she left, I called Thomas and updated him. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I blocked Marissa's number. The next morning, I woke to find my lawn covered in toilet paper. Classic suburban retaliation. As I cleaned up the mess, several neighbors stopped by. "We saw the news," Mrs. Henderson from next door said. "That Briggs woman is saying terrible things about you." "Let her," I replied, stuffing wet tissue into garbage bags. "Need help?" Mr. Peterson offered, already reaching for a roll stuck in my maple tree. Soon half the neighborhood was in my yard, cleaning and gossiping. These people, whom I'd lived beside for 20 years but barely knew, were showing more kindness than my own daughter. "My son did the same thing," Mrs. Chen confided as we worked. "Married money. Forgot where he came from. Haven't seen my grandkids in 3 years." Their stories poured out. Children who'd grown entitled, families fractured by greed, love tested by social climbing. I wasn't alone in my heartbreak. By noon, my yard was clean, and my kitchen was full of neighbors sharing coffee and homemade cookies. Community formed in the space my family had vacated. The Tribune article came out that afternoon. "Society wedding implodes, a modern cautionary tale." The reporter had done her homework, interviewing vendors, guests, even the garbage collectors who'd serviced the venue. "Mrs. Callahan was always gracious," the florist was quoted saying. "She paid deposits promptly and never haggled, unlike certain other parties involved." The caterer was less diplomatic. "We've never been treated so disrespectfully. They demanded champagne service on a beer budget, then blamed us when reality hit." But it was the photographer's quote that struck deepest. "I've shot hundreds of weddings. I've never seen a mother of the bride so deliberately excluded." It was cruel. Victoria's interview aired that evening. Carol came over to watch it with me, armed with popcorn and wine. Victoria declared to the camera, her pearl necklace catching the studio lights. The reporter, to her credit, pushed back. But wasn't Mrs. Callahan paying for significant portions of the wedding? Victoria's composure cracked slightly. Financial contributions don't excuse destructive behavior. What about the seating arrangement? Multiple witnesses confirm Mrs. Callahan was seated outside the main tent. That's preposterous. We would never... We have photos, the reporter interrupted, displaying an image someone had captured. My lone table by the garbage bins. Victoria's face went rigid. No comment. Carol whooped. That's what we call journalistic integrity. The interview backfired spectacularly. Social media exploded with support for me. Team Mother of the Bride started trending. Someone created a meme of Victoria's shocked face with the caption, "When the trash takes itself out." 3 days later, I received a formal letter from Marissa's lawyer demanding $75,000 in damages. Thomas laughed when I showed him. "Let me handle this," he said. Over the next week, he systematically dismantled their case, providing contracts, receipts, and witness statements. He also uncovered something interesting. Victoria had taken out wedding insurance but let it lapse, assuming I would cover everything. The countersuit Thomas filed was a masterpiece. Emotional distress, defamation, breach of verbal contract. "We won't win everything," he explained, "but they'll think twice about pursuing this further." He was right. Within days, their lawyer suggested mediation. The mediation took place in a neutral conference room downtown. Marissa arrived with Daniel and their lawyer. I came with Thomas. Victoria, notably, was absent. "She's not feeling well," Daniel explained, looking embarrassed. The mediator, a no-nonsense woman named Janet, cut straight to the point. "We're here to resolve the financial disputes arising from the Briggs-Callahan wedding. Mrs. Callahan, would you like to begin?" Thomas spoke for me. "My client fulfilled all contractual obligations. Deposits were paid. Final payments were discretionary based on satisfactory service. Given the treatment she received, she exercised her right to withhold payment." Marissa's lawyer countered with claims of emotional damage, social humiliation, and financial losses. "Your client," Thomas responded, "publicly humiliated a woman who sacrificed everything for her. The emotional damage runs both ways." Hours passed. Accusations flew. Coffee grew cold. Finally, Janet called for a break. In the hallway, Daniel approached me. "This is wrong," he said quietly. "All of it." I studied him. "Then why are you here?" "Because Marissa is my wife, but..." He glanced back at the conference room. "I'm starting to understand why you did what you did." "Mr. Briggs," Thomas warned. "No, let him speak," I said. Daniel took a deep breath. "I found something in Marissa's old room at your house. We were there packing her things last month. A box of cards, all from you. Birthday cards, Valentine's cards, little notes in lunchboxes. Hundreds of them." My throat tightened. I'd forgotten about that box. "She kept them all," he continued, "which means at some point, she cared. Something changed her, and I think it might have been us. My family, our expectations." "Daniel!" Marissa's sharp voice cut through the moment. "What are you doing?" He turned to face his wife. "Trying to fix this. There's nothing to fix. Stop," he said firmly. "Just stop. Your mother doesn't owe us anything. We owe her." The mediation resumed with a different energy. Daniel's change of heart seemed to deflate Marissa's righteousness. By day's end, we reached an agreement. No money would change hands. No lawsuits would proceed. A clean break. As we prepared to leave, Marissa cornered me by the elevators. "Are you happy now? You've turned my husband against me." "No," I said sadly. He's seeing what was always there, what you chose to ignore. I need my mother, she said, her voice cracking for the first time. You need the idea of a mother, I corrected. Someone to support you unconditionally, fund your dreams, accept whatever treatment you dish out. But that's not love, Marissa. That's exploitation. The elevator arrived. As the doors opened, she grabbed my arm. Please, don't cut me off completely. I gently removed her hand. I'm not cutting you off. I'm letting you go. There's a difference. The doors closed between us. In the parking garage, Thomas patted my shoulder. You did well in there. Did I? I felt drained, empty. I just divorced my daughter. No, he said. You set boundaries. What happens next is up to her. Driving home, I passed the venue where the wedding had taken place. The vineyard looked peaceful in the late afternoon sun. No trace of the drama that had unfolded there. Life moved on, indifferent to our human dramas. That evening, I began packing up Marissa's childhood room. Each item I wrapped felt like closing a chapter. Dance recital costumes, high school yearbooks, swim team trophies. The box of cards Daniel had mentioned sat on her old desk. I opened it, reading through years of my own handwriting. Have a great first day of kindergarten. Love, Mom. Happy sweet 16 to my beautiful daughter. Congratulations on your graduation. I'm so proud of you. When had she stopped reading them? When had they become just objects to store rather than messages to cherish? My phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mrs. Callahan, this is Sarah Mitchell from Channel 9. We're doing a follow-up story on the wedding situation and would love your perspective. I almost declined, then reconsidered. You know what? Yes, I'll talk to you. The interview aired 2 days later. I wore my blue dress, the same one I'd worn to the wedding, and spoke simply, from the heart. I raised my daughter to be strong, independent, successful, I told the camera. In that sense, I succeeded. What I failed to teach her was that strength without kindness is just cruelty. Independence without gratitude is just selfishness. Success without humanity is just emptiness. Do you regret your actions at the wedding? I regret that it came to that. But no, I don't regret standing up for my dignity. What would you say to other parents in similar situations? I looked directly into the camera. Love your children, but love yourself too. You matter. Your feelings matter. Your dignity matters. Nor don't let anyone, not even your own child, convince you otherwise. The response was overwhelming. Letters, emails, phone calls, from parents who'd been marginalized, grandparents who'd been forgotten, anyone who'd ever felt invisible in their own family's story. I framed one letter in particular, from a woman in Ohio. You didn't just stand up for yourself. You stood up for all of us who've been treated like doormats by the people we love most. Thank you for showing us it's never too late to matter. The first frost of autumn painted my garden silver, and I stood at the kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. 3 months had passed since the wedding, and my life had transformed in ways I never imagined. The modest ranch house I'd bought was smaller than my old home, but filled with light. Carol had helped me choose it, just 5 blocks from her own house, with a small garden plot and a screened porch perfect for reading. A fresh start needs fresh walls, she'd declared, and together we'd painted each room in colors I'd always loved but never used. Warm terracotta for the living room, soft sage for the bedroom, cheerful yellow for the kitchen. The doorbell rang. Probably Mrs. Chen from next door, dropping off her famous dumplings as she did every Friday. Instead, I found a FedEx driver with an envelope requiring signature. Inside was a thick document from Thomas's office, the final papers for my new will and trust. Everything I owned, the house proceeds, my retirement savings, Tom's life insurance that I'd never touched, would go to a scholarship fund for single parents pursuing education, the Susan Callahan Second Chances Fund. I signed where indicated, feeling the weight of finality. Marissa would receive nothing, not out of spite, but because inheritance without relationship was meaningless. Later that morning, I drove to the community center for my volunteer shift. After retiring from teaching, I'd started tutoring adults working toward their GEDs. Today I was meeting Maria, a young mother who reminded me of myself 30 years ago. Determined, exhausted, hopeful. "Mrs. C," she greeted me with a tired smile. "I passed the math section." "Of course you did," I said, pulling out our study materials. "You worked hard for it." As we reviewed essay writing, Maria shared snippets of her life. Working nights, raising 2 kids alone, dreaming of becoming a nurse. Her story was my story. Thousands of women's stories. "How did you do it?" she asked during a break. "Raise a child alone while working?" I considered the question. One day at a time, and I thought sacrifice was love. Now I know love requires balance. You can't pour from an empty cup. After tutoring, I met Carol and our book club friends at the new cafe downtown. We'd evolved from discussing literature to sharing lives, 6 women over 60, each with our own stories of loss and renewal. "Any word from Marissa?" Helen asked gently. "Not directly," I replied, "though I heard through the grapevine that she and Daniel separated." The news had reached me last week through Mrs. Henderson, who'd heard from her hairdresser, who'd styled Victoria Briggs for a charity event. Apparently, Daniel had moved out, unable to reconcile the woman he'd married with the woman she'd become. "Poor boy," Martha commented. "Poor Marissa," I said, surprising myself. She lost herself trying to be someone else. That afternoon, I worked in my garden, preparing it for winter. The roses I'd transplanted from my old house had taken root, promising blooms for next spring. As I mulched around their bases, a car pulled into my driveway. Daniel stepped out, looking older than his 29 years. "Mrs. Callahan, Sue," he corrected himself. "May I speak with you?" I gestured to the porch chairs. "Would you like some tea?" "No, thank you." He sat heavily. "I wanted you to know. Marissa and I are divorcing." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "Don't be. It's necessary." He stared at his hands. "After the mediation, I started seeing things clearly. The way she treated you wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern." I waited, letting him find his words. "She's been lying to me. About money, about her past, about who she is. The woman I married doesn't exist." He looked up. "But the saddest part? I think she's lying to herself most of all." "What will you do?" "Start over. Maybe move back to Chicago near my sister." He pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. "I found these in her jewelry drawer. She never wore them." Inside were Tom's grandmother's pearls, still in their original setting. "She kept them," I whispered, "hidden away, like everything real about her past." He held out the box. "They belong with you." I took the pearls, feeling their familiar weight. "Thank you, Daniel." He stood to leave, then paused. "You were right, you know. At the mediation. Love isn't exploitation. I wish I'd understood that sooner." After he left, I sat holding the pearls, remembering my own wedding day. Tom fastening them around my neck, whispering promises of forever. We'd had 16 good years before the accident. 16 years of real love, not the performance Marissa had chosen. That evening I hosted my first dinner party in the new house. Carol brought her famous lasagna, Helen contributed salad, Martha made dessert. We crowded around my small dining table, laughing and sharing stories. "To new beginnings," Carol toasted. "To choosing ourselves," Helen added. As we clinked glasses, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, then saw the preview. "Mom, it's me. New number. Please read this." I excused myself to the kitchen, heart pounding. The message continued. "I've lost everything. Daniel left. Victoria won't speak to me. My friends have disappeared. I've been seeing a therapist. She says I have to face what I've done, who I've become. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for money. I'm just asking if someday, maybe, we could talk. Really talk. Marissa." I stared at the screen, emotions warring within me. The mother in me wanted to call immediately, to comfort, to fix. But the woman I'd become knew better. I typed back, "I'm glad you're getting help. When you're ready to meet me as equals, not as provider and taker, we can talk. Until then, I wish you well on your journey." Then I returned to my friends, to the life I'd built on my own terms. Later that night, alone in my cozy bedroom, I opened my journal. Another new habit. The pages were filled with discoveries, books I loved, places I wanted to visit, dreams deferred but not forgotten. Tomorrow I would drive to the community college and sign up for art classes, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. Next month I'd join Carol on a seniors cruise to Alaska. In spring I'd plant vegetables alongside my roses. The pearls lay on my dresser, moonlight giving them an ethereal glow. Tomorrow I would wear them to Sunday brunch with my book club, not as a relic of the past, but as a symbol of continuity, proof that some things of value survive even the harshest storms. My phone showed no new messages from Marissa. Perhaps she was beginning her own journey of self-discovery. Perhaps not. Either way, my path was clear. I picked up my pen and wrote, "Today I learned that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, that love sometimes means letting go completely, that the family we choose can be stronger than the family we're born into, that it's never too late to matter to yourself." A knock at my door interrupted my writing. Through the window, I saw Carol standing on my porch, holding 2 mugs. "Thought you might need some chamomile," she said when I opened the door. "Big day." We settled on the porch swing, wrapped in quilts against the autumn chill. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "For all of it. Even the parts that hurt? Especially those..." She squeezed my hand. "You didn't just save yourself, Sue. You showed all of us what's possible." We sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear one by one. Somewhere in the night, a train whistle sounded. Lonely but somehow hopeful, like a story heading toward an unknown destination. "Do you think she'll change?" Carol asked eventually. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But I've learned that's not my responsibility. I can hope for her, pray for her, even love her from a distance. But I can't fix her. She has to want to fix herself. And if she does?" I considered this. "Then we'll build something new. Not mother and child as we were, but 2 women who choose to know each other. If that day comes. And if it doesn't, then I'll still have this. Friends, purpose, peace. A life I'm proud of." As Carol headed home, I remained on the porch, wrapped in my quilt. The night air smelled of wood smoke and possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new opportunities to live authentically. The wedding that had ended in disaster had become my beginning. In losing a daughter who never truly saw me, I'd found myself. In giving up the role of endless provider, I discovered the joy of simply being. I touched the pearls at my throat, worn now for myself, not for tradition or obligation. They felt different somehow, lighter, free. A falling star streaked across the sky, and I made a wish, not for reconciliation or revenge, but for wisdom. The wisdom to know when to hold on and when to let go, when to give and when to preserve, when to love and when to walk away. Inside, my phone remained silent, but my heart, for the first time in decades, was at peace.